Now, there are a few common mistakes that we might run into when we're dealing with variables, and I'll illustrate these common mistakes through a few examples. The first example is this. In this example, I've declared a variable called myLastName, then I log that variable to the console. But do you notice what's wrong here? In this example, I haven't actually assigned any data to the variable myLastName. In the next example, we kind of have the opposite problem. We assign data to a variable called myMiddleName, but we haven't actually declared that variable. In the third example, the last example, we log to the console a variable that we have neither declared nor assigned any data to. So let's go to the browser to see how all of these print out or log to the console. In our first mistake, it prints undefined. And this happens because we declared a variable but didn't assign or didn't initialize it with any data. So what happened under the hood is that our computer allocated certain bits to store whatever data we wanted to assign or initialize to that variable, but since we didn't do that, all it has are leftover bits from the previous program that ran it or that used those bits. And so those bits make essentially no sense to JavaScript. JavaScript knows that they're not data that we're dealing with in this program. So rather than logging that information in any way, it just simply prints undefined. Now in the second mistake, we assign value to a variable, but we never declared that variable. However, in this case, our browser and JavaScript were able to deduce that it needed to declare a new variable since it hadn't been seen before. In this case, we were able to get away with it. However, it's very bad practice to do this. We always want to make sure that we declare a variable when we first use it, when we first introduce it into our program. In the last example, it prints an error. It says, "Not my name is not defined." And in this case, we neither declared nor initialized it before trying to use this variable. So JavaScript and our browser had no idea what this variable was, where it came from. There were never any bits that were allocated to store this data, and we never assigned data to a variable in any of those bits. And so JavaScript has no concept of what this variable is or where to find it in our computer. So it simply just says that it's not defined. Of course, these are very simple examples, and as the complexity of our programs grows, things like this are not going to be as explicit or as easy to debug. So it's important to start with this simple example and see what these types of errors or these types of mistakes produce using a simple example, so that as we get more complex with our data, we'll be able to more easily deduce what kind of error we might incur when dealing with variables and data in our JavaScript code. And now that we understand what a variable is in JavaScript and common mistakes we might incur with them, it's time to get a little bit more into the details of what kind of data and what kind of things we can do with our data in JavaScript.